Live
My
now?
just plugged in a mic. Can people hear me right now?
Yes, we can hear you, Miles. We're live.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Node.js Foundation Technical Steering Committee meeting, October 18th, 2017. We'll start with our regular agenda. So first of all, does anybody have any announcements? Okay, I guess no announcements this week. The next thing on the regular agenda is a working group update. I volunteered the benchmarking work group, and I'm going to give that update. I guess just to give a short outline of the way that what the benchmarking work group is working on. The general plan of attack is to define the key use cases and key attributes of Node.js, and then try to fill in benchmarks which cover those use cases, run those regularly, and to be able to check if we have any regressions. And the process that we're working through is we've documented an initial set of both the use cases and the attributes, and we've added some benchmarks. The ones that are run nightly are at benchmarking.nodejs.org. So you can go take a look. Those run every day, and an extra data point is added to the benchmark charts. They have been useful in terms of, for example, when we had the security issue where we had to turn off snapshots, it clearly showed that startup got longer, and also helped us identify that we hadn't quite gotten fixes back into some of the LTS streams when we thought we had, and to catch that and fix that up, which is good. Some more recent work is along the lines to add in additional benchmarks. So Intel and Udemy Power in particular have been working to add the Node DCEIS benchmarks. That's a whole system benchmark that they've put together and is intended to test something along the lines of what Acme Air does in terms of a whole system benchmark, but is intended to be more general so that they can cover other use cases and so forth. So in the last few weeks, months, we've been working to add Node DCIS, and if you can see that the benchmark data is now flowing and being generated nightly, that there still are a few tweaks being made to the scripts. The other thing that's being worked on is a tooling benchmark. So Benedict from Google has volunteered to put that together. And the intention is to cover the use case, one of the key important use cases for Node.js, which is, as a tool used in the tool chain. And, we'll look, once that benchmark is put together, we'll look to have that running nightly again, is to have another data point to, make sure we don't regress. Just a sec. I had a few notes. I'm just going to pull them up here. See if there's anything else I want to highlight. JS. One of the other things that's being worked on is taking advantage of the new machines that Intel donated to be able to run the core node benchmarks, which can take quite a long time to run. And that script is being tested out. And we're just looking for a little bit more feedback, and then we'll be going out to the broader collaborator community to say, here's another tool that you can use in terms of running those. Generally you need to choose a subset of the benchmarks, because running them all would actually take quite a long time. Next benchmark, next benchmark that's being worked on is adding Ghost. That's been suggested for quite a while, but Udemy is going to pick that up to start looking at that as one that we can run nightly as well. And that's basically the updates that I had. Any questions on what's going on in the benchmarking working group?
No question, but definitely a request. As the Intel machine is used and leveraged more, if you could provide just a summary written summary of what the usage is that we can provide back to Intel. I know that the folks that were involved in helping us get that machine are particularly keen on being able to go back to their management and be able to say this is the benefit that they're providing.
Yeah, I mean, so far I can tell you off the top of my head, I can tell you it's being used to, support those running the core benchmarks and in general testing is the two things right now. As we add more, I can update on that.
Thank you.
Michael, quick request here. I'm not sure what the status is of the benchmarks on version 6. I know at the very least there's a bunch of infrastructure work that was done in the repo that has not been backported. Are you still running benchmarks on LTS versions?
So server not found. Benchmarking.nodejs.org shows the benchmarks results that are run nightly. You can take a look there. It does include 4.6. It includes 4.6, 8, and mastered currently.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I think may be a good thing to line up for the working group in a sprint would be doing an audit of the benchmarks in version 6, as well as the infrastructure, because there's a bunch of stuff that landed upstream that has not been backported, and making sure that when we're doing comparisons that they're actually comparable.
Yeah, and when you say benchmarks, the core benchmarks, to be honest, the benchmarking work group hasn't actually done that much with those. Because they generate so much data, it's not consumable in terms of something to say, we've ran them and we're good or bad. It really, I think they're used mostly in we're doing this particular change, let's look at this subset of them or something like that. I guess what I'd ask is if you have particular requests, at open issues, and describe what you're asking. Describe the ask there, and we can see if that's actually something that the benchmarking work group is impinges on what we've already been looking at. If there's a volunteer, or I know there's some people who don't participate in the benchmarking working group who are quite active with the regular benchmarks, and maybe they'll even volunteer.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay, let's move on to the next part, which is the open issues. So the first one on the list is number 873, which is the temp dir needed on Ubuntu 16.04 and Fedora 23. I think that one is just on because we discussed it last time, and probably it just needs to have TSC agenda removed. Is that? I guess Miles, you'd added it, so is that your recollection as well, or?
Yeah, I'm removing the TSC agenda. This needs to be kicked back to the build working group.
Okay. Remove TSC agenda.
Looks like some work was done on this one, but I'm not sure if it's completed yet or not.
Sorry, can you repeat
Jeremiah,
that,
could you
Jeremiah?
repeat that? I couldn't hear it over the typing. I'm sorry to say.
Right. So it looks like there's been a bunch of work done on this recently, but I'm not sure if it's complete.
Yeah, I just don't. I think the question is whether the TSC needs to be involved at this point, or if it can move forward without TSC.
Retag it in like a month, I guess, if nothing gets done or something.
Yeah, well, Miles is the one who tagged it, and he's removing it, so I think it's okay to just assume that if they need something, we'll hear again.
Uh, 15454. Sorry, no. Next one is 16130, which is support both OpenSSL 1.1.0 and 1.0.2. And I think it was you, Miles, who added it to the agenda.
Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting one for people who haven't been following it. OpenSSL is something that we need to make some decisions on fairly quickly, actually. So 1.0.2 is end of life, end of 2019. Someone please correct me if I have my dates wrong. But we actually ended up having to shorten the LTS lifecycle of 8 by 3 months or 4 months to actually accommodate that. Right now, 1.1.0 is the latest version of OpenSSL. It does not yet have an LTS, any sort of idea of how long support will be. And another big issue is there's no FIPS module right now on 1.1. We have about, we're about to cut version 9. We've got about 6 months until we cut version 10. And we need to have a solid OpenSSL story, or at least SSL story, by the time 10 is cut, because anything big could be a Semver major change. So I just wanted to bring this to the attention of everyone. This work right here, I think, is really important by David Ben from the Boring SSL team. Some changes to get our SSL implementation internally to be able to support both 1.1 and 1.02. But this is just, a stepping stone. We as a group, I think, probably need to task either like a crypto team or some sort of working group to handle this, because the clock is ticking on having a solution for this.
We have a crypto team not really active, unfortunately, I don't think.
This could be a good opportunity to bring people in and get them to have more ownership over the crypto as well. At the very least, we need to have a champion owning this effort. And I think that it's something that we should be talking about, in every other TSC meeting until we have a solution laid out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's something we've got to make a decision on. I guess the decision at this point is I'm almost thinking, once 9 is cut, we should switch over to 1.1 in master at least. Right? Because I think we know that, the next time we cut, we need a 1.1 because 1.02 is going to be end of life. And I don't know, I guess the discussion that can happen is, there has been some discussion around alternatives and so forth, but it seems like that's the straightforward path, is to upgrade to 1.1.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I think probably the best bet here, and I can start spinning this up, is like we need to make a group of individuals who can focus specifically on this problem and offer a solution to the TSC. I'd be willing to help head that. Is there anyone else from the TSC who'd be willing to support and want to be involved?
I'm willing to be involved, although I don't want to step in the way of anybody else.
I know nothing about crypto, so I'm doing this solely because it needs to be done, not because I'm an expert in it at all.
Yeah.
Well, the TSC experts on crypto aren't on this call right now, specifically for OR. Whatever effort should also see if we could pull in Shigeki, even though he's not TSC anymore. So I think reaching out to them specifically would be good.
I'll reach out to Fedora right now.
Does anybody suggest?
Any reason not to reach out to Shigeki right now while you're reaching out to Fedora? Might as well reach out to both.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Does that, just while we have people, are there anybody who thinks that, well, once we cut 9, moving up to 1.1 is not the right thing to do?
As far as I'm concerned, it's just a matter of timing. For instance, we have to have the FIPS module in there. I would not want to see us move up and then regress on FIPS support.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is that we may have no choice, right? If there's no FIPS crypto module, it's not like we're going to do the validation ourselves. And we know that before 10 goes LTS, it's going to be, we can't be using 1.02 anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, we may end up coming to a hard decision, but it's and we can't have one LTS have FIP support and then have 10 go LTS without FIP support.
The challenge there, and this may make more sense to break out into another conversation, but OpenSSL hasn't even begun writing a FIPS module. And as far as when I did research across other alternatives, the only other alternative that had a FIPS module is Boring SSL, and they explicitly state that they do not have a support contract for external vendors in their README. So it's not, doesn't sound like the kind of thing that we can be relying on. And I think that maybe there's some bigger questions that we should have with some people in the crypto industry to see, like, what is the long-term support for FIPS even looking like? Because I've heard some sentiment that some people may not even want to see ongoing support for FIPS at all.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation we need to have, because if we're going to go that route, then what we should be doing is deprecating the FIPS support now, right, or as soon as possible.
Well, I mean, we could guard by deprecating FIPS in 9, and then we can bring it back as a Semver minor at any time.
I'd rather not deprecate if we're not sure if that's the route we're going to go. I don't want to deprecate it and then bring it back.
Mm-hmm. I guess we can do a docs deprecation later, though, in 9.
Or yeah, we can do docs deprecation and then a hard deprecation in 10 if necessary. Right.
So maybe should we just do that? Should we do a docs deprecation right now, and then that way we set it up for a hard deprecation if we have to?
No, I think we need to look at it, decide if that's the right thing to do.
Okay. James, would you like me to include you in this email?
Yes, please.
So we may not be able to deprecate FIPS in 10 because we may not have FIPS in 10.
Right, and that's what we need to look at. So we need to, basically, in a very short period of time, we need to look at what is the future of FIPS in the OpenSSL, and what we can continue to support, and then make a decision on doing a docs only deprecation first in 9 after it's already been released. As 9.0 is going out next Tuesday. And then if it looks like in 10 we won't have FIPS at all, then we may have to make a hard decision to do a runtime deprecation in 9. This can't be, it's got to be something we figure out quickly.
All right, so it sounds like Miles and James and possibly Michael and some others will have a conversation and bring this back.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with where we're at right now.
Issue is 15454. Async hooks skip sanity checks when disabled. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the issue. Oh, and do we know who added it to the agenda? I'm just looking to see. So Andreas Madsen did. Okay. Is anybody here who's been in the conversation? I see Matteo and James, you've both been in the PR.
One second, I'm looking.
Yes, I've been Yes, I've been part of the pull request.
Okay, so can you give the context and what is being asked of the TSC in terms of this issue?
So there have been some questions being added done from Andreas to the TSC. Okay. So one of the problems, let me give you a couple of context about these pull requests specifically. This pull request changes how the checks. So the async hooks is still experimental, okay? And in being experimental, in order to you need to validate that what it's doing is correct, and there are a bunch of asserts being done internally. Now, at some point, there were so many regressions because of those asserts that were crashing Node, even without the checks, even without async hooks being enabled. Then those checks will needed, so that we had to loosen those checks in 8, okay, because it was not possible to actually like ship it. We broke the wall of the happy ecosystem because of this. We had to rush a release, I don't know, at some point in July or something. So the checks were made loose. Now the question it's about making those checks so making those checks stronger only if there are part of it's very hard to explain because it's not really my core subject. So making those checks stronger only if async hook is enabled. So if async hook is enabled and the async hook machinery goes into a unreliable state, you will have an assert and a hard crash for Node. Okay. So, however, async hooks, it's an experimental feature. So on the other side, we want to be able to diagnose those situations, okay? And if those arises, we want to have them we want to report those issues, okay? We want user to say, hey, my node crashes, and they post us an issue. Otherwise, if node doesn't crash, if we don't print out anything, of course, they will not report it and will never fix the bug. Okay, we need massive test base. Okay, so the bigger question is, if we can. So the question that is brought up the TSC is, the question is, should those checks being enabled in 8, given that it's going into LTS sooner, in a couple of weeks' time, okay? Even if its async hook is not stable yet. This is this is the first question, and there is a conflict of interest of Node being stable and async hook being stable at this point. So what's the priority? And should we treat master release differently in terms of stability? Those are the questions are part of these issues that I'm posting here in the chat. So it's at the end of it's not the last comment, but it's close to the bottom of the issue.
I've also waited on the thread. I think this particular change is good. I really have nothing else to add beyond what Matteo's already said.
Right. Does it affect, like, if it sounded like unless you're using async hooks, it wouldn't have an effect on running your application?
Sorry,
Well, it sounded like from what you said that it was intended so that these asserts only fire if you've turned on async hooks.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you're not using the experimental feature, it should not affect the reliability of your application.
Right. Whereas
And-
right now, even if you are not using it and something is, something becomes incorrect, then it would, which has been fairly
Okay. So this fix actually fixes that and makes it safer for people who are not using async hooks.
Well,
Yeah.
The checks that we're talking about, these are not about the feature async hooks itself. They're like tracking Node's internal async state. So like if there is a crash, it usually does point to something being wrong. It's like even if we didn't have async hooks, we would want to know about these failures. Just like to give a bit more perspective on what this is about and why Trevor does, if I remember correctly, why Trevor does not want this.
Right. And sorry. Yeah, that's exactly why this has been a difficult conversation, because it's easy to see both sides of it, and it's like, well, yeah, but neither argument is incorrect. So.
So basically, there is subjection to these changes, which is why it's here, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Trevor is objecting.
Okay.
Or at least that's how I read the issue. It's been a while.
It's one of those loose objections, if I call it. So had to actually like make that both you, Anna, and Trevor, there is a comment saying, please say if you are objecting or not. And you said that you were not against those changes, but Trevor didn't engage.
Okay.
So, we are discussing this now. Formally, we probably can land it. I am without calling for a vote, but probably if, it will be good if you are in agreement that this should land.
For 8, it lands so that, there's less impact potentially to 8, but then in master, we go back the other way. Basically have them on all the time in master. And I guess potentially then in 9, but in 8, have them turned off so that, I guess, the feeling is that reduces the risk for the LTS users to not have them in 8 at this point.
No idea. Yeah.
No. Okay. So I guess do we need so you're saying we don't need to schedule a vote. Maybe and it looks like the direction is this will go ahead and land. If people object, they should go in and engage in the issue. Is that the outcome?
Considering the latest rule change that was done some time ago,
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
No, sorry, it was not exactly. If you can do a little bit of a scheme of a couple of comments and see exactly if if Trevor is objecting there or not. That is not clear to me if it's formally objecting or not. That's my only question.
Our rules allow you to say, drop a comment in there saying, asking if it's a blocking objection or not, and if you don't get an answer, you can assume, and I'll have to look the rule change was recent. We've set like a X number of days, no response. You can just assume it's not blocking.
Yeah, I think it's assume it's not blocking then. Yes, so it can land without a vote.
Yeah, let me look up how many days that is. Jeremiah,
Well, I mean, that was all like 20 some odd days ago, so we should be fine. Anyways, I'll ask Trevor about this.
Yes, that would be fantastic if you could.
But I think, like, I don't know, it looks fine to me. Like, at least the discussion. I don't changes whatever. You can always, like, if there's hard disagreements, it can always be reverted upwards to, so whatever.
Is there anyone on the call that feels strongly about not doing this? Is there anybody that? Yeah, I was gonna say, is there anybody on the call that feels strongly against making this change, just on the surface of it, based on what you know so far?
My biggest concern is that there are issues with async hooks. Are we saying that it's not ready for production?
It's an experimental feature, so it's not ready for production by definition.
And I would say that we've seen sufficient issues with it that we probably want to give it more time as experimental.
I would agree with that, but on the same hand, like, I would say it's getting pretty close to being production ready. I mean, like, there are quite a few open issues that we want to iron out before we say this is no longer experimental, I guess. I think we're on a good track.
I agree with that sentiment.
Cool. So we think that the bugs that we have left are fixable at this point, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything that's not fixable. I'll put it that way. We haven't seen anything yet that's not fixable. I think what we need to do is give it time to stabilize, and then once we're sure it's stable, still give it a little bit of time after that before we pull that experimental label off.
We should probably move on from this. Can we leave anything else up to the issue?
Yep, sounds good.
Issue is 15346, runtime deprecate buffers constructor by default.
Can I just interject really quickly? The last one we have on the agenda here is exposing HTTP2 by default. That one's extremely time sensitive. Would anyone object to us bumping that one up in the queue?
No, okay, let's do that. So we'll do the next one, which is 15685.
Is it really though? Because that link does not work.
I think it's 684.
684, yeah, I think I fixed it the wrong way.
I think the whole here, I'll get the proper link and put it in the chat. I think the link is worked.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't copy that right. Although it will
It's 15685, and I'm posting a link in the chat.
All right.
So the time-sensitive portion of this is that this change has already happened in master. Well, the making expose HTTP2 command line flag a DOP, a no op has already happened in master. This is about getting this into 8 before it goes to LTS. The issue here is that there is an existing HTTP2 module out on userland. That author has eagerly agreed to deprecate their module and has already done so for anybody using 9 and higher, and said that they will do so also for anybody using the 8.x. I think it'd be 8.8 or higher if we landed this. And he has already been working towards getting his users to migrate, and talking to them about migrating over. For the users that aren't, this PR specifically on 8x introduces an environment variable, node no HTTP2, that can be used to turn off HTTP2. So it would be on by default. Then you would set this environment variable to turn it back off, just in case this change breaks you. Time sensitivity on this is we have until next Tuesday, to actually get the 8 out of LTS. So we need to make a decision on whether we're going to land this or not in 8x.
I'm a huge +1 on this. A huge benefit is having native HTTP support. Means no more compiling anything for HTTP2, which offers like native out-of-the-box support. It will help with things such as gRPC. It will help with adoption across many environments. I think that this is a win, and I think that the few edge cases where people's userland stuff is going to be affected, the deprecation will give them a clear heads up as to what is going on and how to mitigate.
Are you saying that there would be a deprecation warning when you have like the user module in your node modules folder and you try to require HTTP2?
No, this would be on installation.
Installation of the userland module. So the userland module is deprecated.
The other thing suggested in the issue was to just rename our implementation to something like HTTP/2, right?
It is, in my opinion, the ship has already sailed on that. We're 2 weeks away from LTS. We want to have a release out next week. I don't see a path where we can do that in a timely fashion. Now, what we can decide to do, which I don't think is the best idea, is we could consider changing the flag to December minor in a future 8 December minor release. But to me, that makes me a little uncomfortable, and I'd rather have us land this before LTS.
In a December patch?
Landing it in a December minor before LTS rather than in a December minor after LTS. Like, this should be something that's supported in the entire LTS release cycle.
I would like to kindly remember that this is still an experimental feature. So landing it, removing the flag, enabled us to, in a future LTS release, to drop the experimental flag. So technically, we could still land some very major changes even in the LTS stuff, I think.
So as I do not hear any objections on this, I think we're good to move forward. James, would you be able to rebase that pull request and I can work on getting it landed this week?
Yep. I'll get that rebase today.
And then we can include, Evan, are you on the call still?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I think for the security release next Tuesday, we could roll all the other updates in as well.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, excellent. I'll talk to you offline about that.
Cool.
Back to the agenda where we were then. Does anyone have anything to say about this buffer constructor thing? Issue
I'm pretty sure to keep
46.
I wasn't very active lately, but I'm going to look at that issue now. I updated some data on that, and I think that I need about a day or two to chime in on this one.
So, so I think that's good that we, get the data. I saw your comment, Nikita, that it looks like usage is, instances of usage is up, but overall dependency on it is down because some popular modules have moved off of the buffer structure. So overall, that's a positive development, but not as positive as we would like, I guess. I did, as I mentioned in the issue, I took a straw poll at Node Interactive. We had, I believe, 7 TSC members in the room, and when asked if we should never deprecate buffer constructor, at least based on what we currently know about it, 5 of them raised their hands, and I think that if the sense of the TSC as a whole is that it's unfortunate that there's this foot gun out there, but it's perfectly possible to use it. It's perfectly possible to use it in a safe way, and a lot of people do, and we should not break those modules or cause users of those modules to think something might be broken or unsafe because of the deprecation warning. If that is the broad sense of the TSC, we should probably make that clear. I still think it's okay for people to raise this every 6 months with every release, because membership on the TSC changes, facts on the ground change. Maybe we'll all change our minds. But Evan now says that he would have raised his hand. So that's 6 people on the TSC who believe that there's no reason to deprecate buffer constructor. So I'd kind of be interested in hearing from people whose opinions we don't know. Like, I'm sure that Nikita believes that we should probably deprecate buffer constructor at some point.
Yes, but I would probably formulate that in a different way, either on emails or GitHub. Also, I might need some help on that private repo that I linked to, but we can discuss this later.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that last.
I said that I also might need some help on the with the private repo that I set up on this issue, but I think that we can discuss that later after the public part.
So is there anybody who hasn't voiced an opinion on this that feels strongly that we should deprecate or that we shouldn't ever deprecate?
Rich, there is one question I want to make to add one thing to my statement at Node Interactive, because that was a straw poll, and that was not all the world for it. I am open to consider the deprecation of the buffer constructor after 4 goes one or two releases after 4 goes out of maintenance. So if the downloads for 4 goes down, it's probably safe to deprecate it at that point.
For the reference, 4 supports new buffer IP.
No,
since
exactly.
4.5.
4.3 doesn't have, and it's in AWS Lambda. So no.
But 4.5 has, and 4.3 is already unsupported.
Absolutely, but still people think that if you market it as Node 4 compatible, it's not Node 4 compatible. People don't care about the version number of 4 that they are using. Really. This is a problem generically for us, but this is the actual example.
So I don't think we're going to come to a resolution on this here and now, but I'll take the action item if it's okay with everybody else. I know we have a lot of other things on the agenda. I'll take the action item to sort of like feel out people individually to figure out where we stand collectively on this. And I'll try to capture the subtleties, like what Matteo was saying about, if open to it, but not right now, when, and maybe even if we can even nail down like what specifically would make someone open to it, like if usage is lower than X% or something.
We have plenty
Sounds
more
good.
agenda items, and if we're still talking about this, I think we should move on.
Yeah, I would point out, some of the agenda items that we do have are regarding the governance proposals, and we do have Disha and Sarah on to kind of participate in those conversations, or at least if they have any comments and stuff. So we might want to get to those.
Maybe we should jump right to those then.
All right. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I guess I was talking to space. Did I hear that we're going to move on to some later sections? At least I heard that suggestion.
If we can get to 15.324 and 11.957 today, then that'd be great. But while we have Dan and Sarah here, please talk about some of the TSC items.
Okay, so the next two, let's say we're going to roll over. So proposal, the next one on that front would be 383. So proposal to form a governance working group.
Oh, sorry, there is a thing to be done, which is 15.324, which is a December major change, and it needs to get in before 9. I would love to. There is,
Right.
And there is objection from and there is a massive everybody, all the members leave, so probably we just understand. But I will ask everybody to take a look very quickly. To be frank, both Doug from Express and Aaron from Happy are on board with this change. So I think it's something safe to do, but it needs to be done in 9. We need to make a decision now if we want it in 9. That's the only point.
Yeah, it's got to land by tomorrow night in order to make it into 9, because I'm going to be doing a cutoff, pulling anything in by Friday afternoon.
Okay, can we just say we land this in 24 hours if everything stays this way?
Yeah, I would say if there are no objections by tomorrow afternoon, I plan to land it. To that.
But I guess there is one objection, right? So
yes.
So as it is right now, I see sign off on it from 9 TSC members and objections from 1. If one more TSC member who has not signed off on it signs off, it's the equivalent of a vote because we'll have consensus on the TSC.
right. So I guess we could close if anybody who's here can do that.
2 more TSC members.
Oh, was I off by 1?
Michael, I keep muting you because there's echo and typing when your mic is on.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So, I mean, are there people who are on the call right now who are willing to jump in there, who haven't voted, so that we could get the last 2 votes and effectively close on this?
This is the 400 HTTP issue?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't yet, so I'll review it right now.
Yeah, I will have a look as well.
Okay.
Okay, then we're good.
Okay. So I'm gonna change that from rollover to discuss additional votes will be added by Rich Ali. Hope it that this pushes it over the 50%. Okay, so then we want to move on to, we'll roll over 11957 to next week. And then we'll move on to 383, which is proposal to form a governance working group.
Well, on that, Dan, just let me know. He's got a hard stop like in 3 minutes, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to have him for too long on.
Right, I'm not sure, is there, what discussion do we need to have on that front?
Well, so we just basically need to figure out if this is the direction we want to go down or not. There needs to be additional clarification on that. Rod posted some comments to the GitHub thread. Basically, the short version of this, we talked about a number of changes to TSC governance at Interactive. We've talked about this on an ongoing basis. The idea is to have a small committee go work on the concrete ideas, and then bring that back to the TSC for vote. So, yeah, I guess the idea would be if anyone has any thoughts or objections on that, to bring that to that GitHub thread, and so we can discuss it. But let's make sure it's on the agenda next week, so we can actually talk about it. And let's put it earlier on in the agenda, so we can make sure we get to it. Would you have anything to add, Dan? You're still there?
Okay, I guess Dan doesn't have anything to add. Basically,
I can add. I'd like to add one thing really quickly to it, just based on like some of the bits that I put in the thread. And I kind of have like mixed feelings on it. So on one hand, I think that it's important that everyone on the TSC is engaged in our governance, but I also recognize that smaller groups can accomplish more in a quicker period of time, especially if a smaller group chooses to engage in person, and the TSC can then iterate on those findings and suggestions. So I'm pro putting together a small group to come up with suggestions that we can do for our governance, but I really have concerns about it being a full-time thing or being a regular activity. And I would personally really like to see everyone on the TSC engaged in this process.
Yeah, Miles. So can folks hear me now? I had a double mute situation.
Yeah,
yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I think I have to apologize up front for my use of the working group terminology. I learned as I was posting issues over the last week that working groups have a very specific meaning for our collaborators, and that took a bit of parsing to gain understanding there. So the determination of whether a governance focused working group exists beyond the current need to evaluate and propose potential changes to governance, I think is a secondary consideration to a suggestion of this is a matter that's going to take a lot of effort and thought. And interestingly, this meeting is a great example of how in the face of all of the technical issues that we have to deal with that are pressing, these sorts of longer term issues can fall by the wayside. So that's why a proposal of having a smaller committee, and I do think it's important to work to do some of the fit up and enablement up front, so that the folks that are engaging here feel like that what maybe months of effort are going to be received, appreciated, and not have to go through just a legitimacy test when a proposal comes to the TSC.
So basically, it sounds like you're trying to make sure everybody's aware that this is being proposed, and if there's concerns, to raise them sooner than later, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Because I think otherwise, in the issue, it sounds like, you could put together, get the group of people who are interested and get started.
Well, I would say that, yes, there's that. There's also needs to be this, there needs to be a consensus with the TSC that this is a blessed effort, that it's not just a group of folks coming up with a proposal, that putting a ton of work into it, pitching it to the TSC and having the TSC, meh, right? It has to be something that it does have some blessed legitimacy to it, right? That this group is being tasked with putting together these proposals.
Right. And actually, to Michael's point, I actually don't know that I personally could, right? As an outsider, not a member of the body, part of assessing this and bringing this to the TSC is also establishing whether I could even legitimately go work on that sort of a thing and come up with a proposal and present it to the TSC as a non-member of that body.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can propose whatever, but what you're getting at is having it so that when something is proposed, it's actually expected and will be received well, right?
Yeah, and actually consider. Yeah.
So what's I mean, I'm just trying to think, what is it that would give us that level of comfort?
Possibly a voted mandate from the TSC that says, yes, this is an effort we want to see move forward.
Right. I could see something where, we write a scope that says, here's the scope of what the effort's going to be, here are the people that are involved, and then you could have a vote to say, yes, we're comfortable with that proceeding. Is that along the lines of what you were thinking?
Yes.
Yep. I can make an alternate proposal. One thing that was discussed at the Collaborator Summit was having a TSC meeting where we brought in TSC members in person to work on this stuff. I know in conversations with like Ali, for example, all of us, like in a room at the same time, I felt like we got a lot done, but I feel like it was cut short. If we could even have 2 or 3 days in the same room, I think that we could get a lot of this done in a similar way to what like the subcommittee, what we're looking at. So I'd like to propose that maybe we look, and maybe it couldn't be until the new year, which could be a reason to like have a subcommittee in the meantime. But if we could look into making an official meeting for the TSC specifically to deal with these governance things, it can be optional, but that essentially the group who shows up would be the group that would come up with the suggestions. It was originally floated the Open Source Leadership Summit being run by the LF could be a good place to do this. I think it would be especially apt as we would be surrounded by other members of foundations that we could bring in to do research with and talk to and bounce ideas off of. And a number of our board members will be there as well if we want to get their input.
When is that conference?
That's in March. or February. Let me double check. I have it in my calendar. So it may be a little bit far off is the only issue.
Yeah, keeping in mind the international travelers need to be able to have time to get visa entry, and we may want to make progress on this stuff before we're able to meet.
It's March 6th to March 8th. So, and we can co-locate this as well if we want. Like, if people want to do this in New York, I am more than happy to get a space in the New York office. I'm pretty sure that maybe Franzi could help with getting space in the Munich office, and it's really, really easy to co-locate and collaborate between multiple offices. So if we set up something in the Munich office and something in the New York office, that gives us a North America and a European place, and we can maybe do it on slightly shorter notice. But I would like us to try to push towards doing that, and that seems like a good approach to me.
So unfortunately, I do have to drop. Thanks, Miles. Thanks everybody for having me, and happy to continue the discussion if the TSC wishes on a subsequent discussion as needed. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Should we wrap?
Yeah, we should probably wrap, and then we have a couple items for the private session.
Michael,
Okay, can you guys not hear me again?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I was just asking, is there any concrete action we were giving people out of 3.3 before we move on from that one?
Yes, I would say that the concrete action is to go to that thread, weigh in on your thoughts, the kind of proposal that Miles just made, for instance. Then let's make sure that on next week's agenda, 3.8.3 is discussed earlier. We move it up higher up in the agenda. We can at least start figuring out a concrete path forward based on the conversation.
Okay, sounds good. Took those notes. I think we're basically over time in terms of adjusting voting rules. I think we came to conclusion, but Miles, you'd still wanted that on the agenda. Is that still the case, or should we consider it closed and take it to the board?
Give me 1 second.
Does that have to be taken to the board?
It's a change in our governance, I believe.
Not a change to our calendar. We don't need to take this to the board.
No? Okay.
No. The board doesn't
Okay,
care
excellent.
about
One time we go to the board, the charter changes.
Yeah, so it seems like this is, to me, seems like something that we need to vote on. Doesn't appear like anything like it doesn't appear that we have consensus in the issue. And I think it's a similar, I think the feeling that Rich has there is somewhat similar to how I feel about the governance working group, that it treats the symptom but not the problem, which is engagement. And so I mean, I'm open to doing it from a pragmatic standpoint, but I have real problems about like what it creates as, like a prior art on that. At the very least, I think that we have enough activity right now that excuse me, that we should be able to reach majority votes fairly quickly, especially if people abstain. And the signal to noise thing can be held by like individually pinging people and people taking charge of issues. And I'm concerned about the long-term effect about forcing abstains.
So I'm confused. Didn't we basically have a vote in the GitHub issue already, and the resolution was, whatever, 11-1 or something?
I guess we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 people who have actually signed off on the review.
And then the person who proposed it is 11.
Yeah.
If you're like doing a vote.
So I've just changed my vote on it because I'm difficult, which makes it split.
All right, let's
Okay.
let's give it till next week. And then vote
Yeah.
on it next week.
I was simply asking because I thought it was a done deal, but since it's not, let's move on. Okay. Okay, so, and who should be in the security repo? We'll roll that one over. Roll over. Okay. I think we should, Jeremiah, are there any questions on the live stream?
Yeah, so we have there's one here that's why report the DOS security vulnerability before the patch? As in, why did we do an announcement for it?
Right, we do the announcement so that people who are going to need to incorporate that fix can be ready and prepared to, know that next Tuesday they're going to have to scramble to, incorporate it and apply that new version. And in fact, I think on one of the issues where we're discussing things in the security working group, unless I misinterpreted, people were asking specifically for that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Not really that we can answer. Someone did say that the sound is pretty bad for some of the people who are talking, but I have no control over that because we are in a conference call. Yeah. I think the TLDR on that is we should get the foundation to buy everyone proper mics.
Yeah, I guess. If we could identify who, it might be easier. Everybody sounds reasonable-ish to me, so.
Michael, I'm sorry to break it to you, but like you're echoing and your keyboard is quite loud. And
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll next time I'll put my headset on and see if that works better.
I think that might help. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I guess we could call it for today.
And move to the private section. Right.
Jeremiah, you want to take the stream down?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you, what is it, next week or whatever? I don't know what the time slot is. There's a calendar for this.
Yep.
And we're already over time, so find the calendar, I guess. Or just look for the issues on Node.js/TSC repo.
Yeah, the calendar is https://nodejs.org/calendar.
All right, sounds good.